I unfortunately, one day I woke up and half my face was paralyzed. I'm still getting lots of regular messages from people talking about it. I was at the House of Lords in London yesterday, and everybody was asking me about stood on stage, crippling anxiety, severe depression, like CBT. Like, what? How did this guy even get on the stage? And they're crying in the background. Like, I, I don't really know how I did that. For leaders, founders will experience and do experience mental health challenges. That's like the majority of, let's go with that. And any other way I can possibly say it, if I'm going to change the world with this newfound strength, if my nan has taught me anything can be disruptive, I now need to go and do it. So I had a tough conversation, typed, my mission is to break the stigma of mental health and well-being for leaders.
Welcome to another episode of the Leading Boldly podcast. I'm Matt Clutterham.
And I'm Jenny Jarvis.
Today's guest is someone who doesn't just talk about leadership. He lives it, he redefines it, and he dares to challenge everything we think we know about it and success. Gary Parsons is a speaker, a mentor, and the creator of the Selfish Leadership Framework, a bold approach that helps business owners and executives scale sustainably by doing something radical, putting themselves first. Gary's co-founded and scaled a multi-award-winning business, and from the outside, it all looked like a dream. But behind the scenes, he was running on fumes, pushing harder, working longer, and sacrificing his well-being in the name of growth. I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with that. And after this, it all came crashing down. And what followed was a powerful reckoning, a breaking point that became a turning point. And Gary hasn't kept this journey to himself. He's bravely shared his story with the world on Channel 4's Love My Face, opening up about living with radical difference and the years he spent hiding behind both a physical and emotional mask. It wasn't just a TV appearance, it is a statement about vulnerability, about identity, and about the kind of leadership the world really needs. If you've ever found yourself achieving but feeling less, and if you've ever wondered why success doesn't feel the way you thought it would, and if you're ready to stop running at 60% and lead yourself like your business depends on it, this conversation's for you. Gary, we're so excited to have you here. Welcome to the Leading Boldly podcast.
Thank you. I am excited to be here is an understatement entirely. So yeah, thank you for letting me talk and be here. I really appreciate it. And great to see you both.
Great to see you. Let's start with little Gary. What did childhood look like for you? And was leadership always there?
It was from a very early age, from 12, 13, early on in my life. There was me, my mum, there was my dad in my life who I don't see, and we won't really get into that today, but there was me and my mum around, and I looked at her. She was the person that inspired me. She was the one that made sure that that single parent that needs to do as much as they possibly can to survive. Well, she was not only surviving for herself, she was surviving and flourishing. Perhaps is that maybe flourishing takes it a bit too far, but she was working really hard to make sure that I got at least the minimum of that I needed at all moments. So she was a real inspiration, and I was the young teenager, that's probably my earliest memory of my entrepreneurial spirit, was going out there and designing Microsoft Publisher. Is it still around now? I was using that back in the day, and clip art, and didn't really use paint, and was designing business cards for my neighbours, brochures for my next door neighbour's hair salon. I was building computers. I was making them in my spare time at weekends and an evening. I was buying all the parts, and then my mum was dropping me off at the end of the road, and I was trotting in with a big heavy computer and selling those computers to my teachers, to my friends, to my family. So very early on in my life as a teenager, absolutely, I was very entrepreneurial.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was school like for you? If you were doing all these extracurricular stuff outside of school, what was school like?
School was horrible. I'm gonna use that word
We
very
hear that a lot.
firmly. Yeah, school was horrible. I was the kid that got bullied. I was the kid that stood out for all the reasons that I didn't want to stand out. I was the one that always asked the questions. I remember being in a class and I would not always get thrown out. In fact, I was probably the child that didn't get always thrown out, but in IT I did because I was always the one that wanted to help or get stuck in. I wanted to stand there with the teacher and help all the other kids figure things out and support them. I almost became like a teaching assistant, we'd probably call it now. I don't know if that they were back then, in an unofficial capacity as a child, and so I would get frustrated because I'd want to get involved, or I would be told to be quiet when I would ask questions. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to learn about cumulus nimbus cloud? So, I mean, I've remembered the name. That's probably the best of it. But I wasn't the brightest of kids in that conventional respects. I've just I mean, you've just said the contrast. I clearly was bright. I clearly was doing well. I just wasn't doing it in that true framework and light of education. But,
Mm.
I had a really close circle of friends. I did what I did. And when I got home, I got even more creative and I got stuck into business and designed and did all the things that, I've still got the Lego now that I had when I was a teenager in the 90s. So yeah, school was a horrible place, but I made it my own.
Yeah. We hear that a lot with entrepreneurs, business owners. School was difficult. It makes me laugh actually when you said that about asking why you need to do something. My daughter's got one teacher that knows that she stands at the door prepared for when she comes in and says, "But you need to explain to me why do I need to learn this? Because otherwise I'm leaving."
Mm.
And she's like, "I've always got to be there at the ready with a good reason as to why she needs to learn this thing today."
And we've been in a similar world for a while. My business, I'm sure you'll get into it, was HR people consultancy. That's what we did as a business. We had that. Well, it'll be 16 years this year for my Paul Maths 2009. And you're nodding, so that was the correct maths. So
Who
it's
knows, Gary? My
yeah,
maths is
we'll
terrible.
work it out. We'll work it out. And I'm intelligent, not great with mental arithmetic. So when I was in that business, and I completely forgot what I was going to say now, but yeah,
We were
when I
talking
was
about
that's what I was going to say is in HR and people consultancy, we know that to be able to get employees engaged and on that journey, they need to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're getting there. The highlights, they don't need to know every last bit of detail. Actually, that's probably the wrong thing to do, is give them too much information because that small bit of knowledge is dangerous phrase comes to mind. But actually, as a child in school, and I don't think I'd be having this conversation today, but I feel quite passionate about it, certainly. And I'm sure your other guests may have talked about it as well for the ones I listened to, is that as a child, we need to be on that journey. We need to know, why are we doing these things? Why are we learning these topics? Because we need to have that shared purpose. And children don't understand it. They don't understand the purpose. So they just become disengaged and don't learn and don't succeed as they should. And, in the traditional sense, I should say. Um, so you're absolutely right. Yeah, well done to your child that walks in and questions it, because we should be. If it's not clear, ask the question.
Yeah, I remember a previous place where I worked, and the manager would come and they'd say, "Oh, the staff haven't filled this form in, they haven't done that." And I said, "Have you explained why they need to do it? Or have you explained the implications of what not doing it means to us as a business?" And they were like, "Well, no, it's none of their business." And I was like, "No, that's why they're not doing it. You have to explain why they're doing something for them to value it." So as soon as they did that, the stats went up for filling in all these forms.
It's a bit like a VAT return, isn't it? Everybody hates it. Or doing the accounts at the end of the year. Most smaller businesses certainly will hate it. But actually, doing it at the end of the year is the wrong time. And that's why it feels so ridiculously annoying because you're doing it to serve a purpose of somebody else. But when you recognize that the doing your accounts on a monthly basis, doing flash reports on a weekly basis, depending on the size and the shape of your business, that's when you understand the purpose and the benefit of doing that. So yeah, I completely agree with that. We need to be bought into it. And I live by the phrase, and is it Maya Angelou that said it? And I'm not going to quote them exactly, but I've always lived by this, and I found out somebody else said it first, was that when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
And I think we need to acknowledge that every day is an education for us, and every day we learn. And like I've said, I've been doing that for 16 years and continue to do. And that's just in business, but well, I guess it was earlier on based on my childhood. But yeah, 42 years of doing that then.
Yeah, I love that, Gary. It's really good. Um, so we sort of alluded into the in the introduction that you were doing really well, highly successful, and then you hit a point where everything changed. Just tell us what was going on leading up to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've talked about very openly, I was a very entrepreneurial child. I really enjoyed getting stuck in. I struggled with school, but I'd moved quite independently and found myself, as it were, in my identity, what my purpose in life was. I'd really enjoyed marketing, and I'd seen somebody else in that world, and I said, "Send me everything you've got." And really enjoyed that side. I did business at school. I stayed on in sixth form to learn and do a GMVQ in business, trying to remember all the old terminology.
Yeah.
And it's like back in the day, GMVQ intermediate, GCSE equivalent. And I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the marketing elements of it, really enjoyed the business elements of it. Went off to college. And then halfway through college, a year in, so I did a 2 year course at that point. And halfway through, I unfortunately, one day I woke up and half my face was paralyzed. And all I can remember is going to bed the night before, and my mum has migraines. She still does. I don't like the word suffered when we talk about disability or challenges that we have, that we suffer with something. My mum really does suffer with them, and I've had them, and I it's something that she said. I don't know if it's passed from her, but it's something that I do experience, and it's a huge challenge. So I just thought it's a migraine. And when I woke up and my mum was at work, I think I was off college that day, and I rang her in panic on the phone and said, "My face isn't working." And for those that have seen the Channel 4 show that I was involved in, Love My Face, the response that she gave me, and her friends have absolutely mocked her. We have a really good banter, laughter relationship, my mum and I. And my mum's first reaction was, "Give it a rub," which is absolutely a motherly advice. Just give it a rub; it'll be fine. I'm in work. Stop disturbing me.
Yeah.
And she realised it very quickly that it wasn't just I hadn't slept on the side of my face funnily or hadn't gone numb. Something a lot more serious was happening, and yeah, that my life and my identity changed. And that sounds quite dramatic, but it genuinely felt like that. At that point, I was nearly 18. It was just before my 18th birthday, and yeah, everything that I'd believed and everything that I thought was possible and was aiming towards stopped, and I genuinely felt like my life was over.
We watched the episode on Love My Face. Well, we watched the whole series. It was fascinating.
Yeah, we'd finished your episode and then we literally binged the rest of the series
In
because it
one
was
night.
just such a good series.
The
It's
most
really
beautiful people on
interesting.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were showing the world your experience with facial difference, but what made you say yes to such an exposing program? And what did you learn from about yourself in the
Crikey.
process of
Why,
it?
so why did I say yes to going on the show and doing it? It's a oh, I ask myself that question every time somebody asks me, and I'm rethinking it in my head just as you've asked me again, because it was scary. It was the most exposed and vulnerable I've ever been. And and you've watched the show, you realize that I cry a lot on TV, on camera. How can you not? How can you not cry over something so traumatic? What I didn't realize is that on every episode, I was in the introduction and I opened the show up with me crying. But I was okay about one episode, didn't realize it was going to happen in the trailer of every episode. But I guess when you've cried on TV, on national TV, on demand, I believe it's gone international. So they've sold the rights to the likes of Italy. So when you cried internationally on TV, then it's okay. But
It's
to go
all
back to
over
your
after that, isn't it? It's like there's nothing else that's going to ever bother you again.
absolutely, well, and it can, absolutely. But I get the point. But go back to your question. I had not spoken about it publicly for over 20 years. So that was 2001 when I got diagnosed, when it first happened. And I spent 5 years crying in a mirror. Every day I looked in the mirror, doing my hair, doing whatever it was. Bit of foundation as growing up, you play. I've had to do today with bags under my eyes, try and cover them up. But it's the I spent 5 years really traumatized about and not recognizing the person that was looking back at me, micro fixating on very micro points of my own face. And the only way that I was able to deal with that, and this again sounds really dramatic, but it was so true, it's my own coping mechanism, was to stop smiling, to stop showing the world that my visible difference, my facial difference, because when I did that, people would stop asking me questions. And I kept that facade, that mask that you mentioned in the intro. I kept that up for over 20 years. But there were points where, and I talk about my mask as my armor and how we wear armor, and I do this through the work that I do now with vulnerability, is that I wore it as my armor. But when my mask slipped, when somebody saw that vulnerability, consciously or unconsciously, they would point it out to me, and that was absolutely my weak spot. And I think of, like, back in the days of Camelot, where they used to joust and they'd find a weak spot on the as they're going past on the horses. That was my mask slipping and somebody finding my weak spot. And when they did that, okay, not physically, but psychologically, that destroyed me. And I remember at one point being out with my friends, and I really love dancing. I've done Latin American ballroom dancing as a whole different conversation to get into. And I'm normally the only one that's up on a dance floor. And I don't know, that week it wasn't really feeling it. I think I was tired. And somebody came up to them, and out of my eye shot, but certainly within my earshot, they said, "What's wrong with his face?" And for me, and it's still difficult to hear that, like, swallow the emotion, um, to hear that, to see that happening, that set me back 10 years. So going back to your very important question, I couldn't live like that any longer. So when I saw the opportunity to go and tell the world about what I'd gone through, I did it not just for me, but for everybody else, for all the people that still struggle in silence. And I'll talk about the reaction in a moment, I'm sure. But I spent so many years not talking about it, and I'd only just that year, when the producers approached me, I'd only really just started talking about it. It was a good friend of mine, Farah Kalik. She had scleroderma. I want to say she had, sadly, she passed away a few years ago, and that was the moment where she encouraged me to go and talk about my own visible difference.
Mm.
She
Can you just tell us,
inspired
sorry,
me to
can you just
talk.
tell us about the diagnosis because we haven't actually said what
Mm.
happened.
Mm.
Sorry, yes, of course, my Bell's palsy diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really good question, and because so many people get misdiagnosed. So yeah, to jump back to that, when I was, so just before my 18th birthday, like I say, I woke up to half my face was paralyzed. And it's really, really important to talk about that. Some people do have dual paralysis, bilateral paralysis. Half of my face was paralyzed. I couldn't move my lip. I couldn't move the side of my face, my eyes. I couldn't close. Or certainly not fully. It might have closed a little bit, as I might remember. My forehead, I couldn't move it on that side of the face. Instantly, we go to, I've had a stroke, and I'm sure you will recognize that. I think
Mm.
it's because was it the 90s where, and certainly early 2000s, where we were the noughties as we call it. We saw the adverts for people that had strokes, so it was very well known, and they'd educated people so well with it. And that's what I thought had happened, which is so odd at 18, for ease of numbers. It's so odd. My doctor, I went to him, and I've got to say, was more knowledgeable than some of the doctors that I now hear about that open their screens. I was only reading this week about somebody that walked into the doctor's room, and on their screen they had how to diagnose Bell's palsy on their laptop, and that surprises me. That really surprises me this many years on. But my doctor was really knowledgeable. He talked it through with me. I was very upset. The downside of what my doctor said was, "Oh, it'll be okay. We won't give you steroids because you don't want those. Like you hear loads of stories, you don't want those steroids." And I wrongly said that, by the way. I should make sure I said that really clearly. Not wrongly for him at the time, because it wasn't well known that steroids had a significant impact. And certainly you need to have the steroids within the first couple of days to make a difference, they say now. And he said to me, it's Bell's palsy. You don't know what causes it. You might be stressed. It might be something going on. They still don't really know. And off I went. And he said, come back in 2 weeks. If it's still going on, we'll give you steroids then, which was absolutely the wrong thing to say. There are other conditions, so Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, which people experience that present very similarly. And there are other medications that you have as well as steroids that people need to have. So, yeah, it's really important to talk about that technicality of it for people that are hearing it, because absolutely, if you hear this and you know somebody that's going through it, or you hear somebody in the next week or so, please ask them to go and see somebody. And you'd think going to A&E it would work. You go into your doctor, it would absolutely work. There's still people within those systems that do not know the correct process. And I only spoke to a pregnant mother. Sorry, since she's had her baby, and she had Bell's palsy during her maternal phase, period. I'd had to think of the correct terminology. That duration of time, and she got told by the midwife just to go and sit in A&E, and because the midwives and the maternal ward just said, we don't know what to do with that. That's nothing to do with us. You need to go over there. So there's just so much lack of knowledge. I've got to say, Facial Palsy UK, Changing Faces, Face Equality International do an amazing job. That's just some charities that are out there, but there's so much education that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should say as well, as at any one time in the UK, it's estimated, and this was a few years ago it was done, but at any one time in the UK, it's estimated that there's 100,000 people that live with facial paralysis. And unfortunately, I was one of the people that didn't fully recover, but 70% of people do. But 30% is still a large number of people
Yeah.
It sure is,
that
yeah.
have to live with either a significant, and I mean that from, the functionality, because certainly it's significant internally, but the significant difference in it makes in our lives, or even just that small change, doesn't go away. And that's 30% is a large number.
It sure is. What's been the impact of being on the show? You've been pretty busy since, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was looking at what date it was, and John O. Lancaster, who is the most beautiful person on this planet,
Yeah.
possibly the universe. I saw him post something on social media yesterday going, wow, where's the time gone? I know he flew out to America within days of it going on air. So he's had a really busy schedule to run to. The impact has been phenomenal. I've There's still people. Only this morning, I had a message from somebody saying, "I'm really sorry. I've been really busy. I've only just got round to watching this." It's perhaps not daily that I'm getting messages off people, but I'm still getting lots of regular messages from people talking about it. I was at the House of Lords in London yesterday, and everybody was asking me about it. Most people are in tears
Yeah,
when they talk to me,
it was
which
very
gets me, as you can
emotional.
see. It's just the the significant impact it has on an individual, whether they are openly owning their visible facial difference. And you'll hear me use those two bits of terminology. I talk about mine as a facial difference, but the difference and just being able to, like, people that own it. But there are so many people that live in silence. I'll tell you about a story, and I'm sure she'll. I'll keep it anonymous if I may, but I'll talk
Mm.
about somebody who has a rosacea. And I think it's eczema or rosacea. Forgive me, my brain's not working as well today after my running around yesterday. And she spoke about a time where she was getting a train with her two children and her husband, and she's never shared this story with anybody close. And she messaged me and told me this story, and she was on a train, and the person, as we do in the UK, we have to change trains about 9 million times, as I did yesterday. And she said she reached out to me and said, "I really inspired by your story. I was traveling on a train. We got off to change at a station, and this person came up to me and said, 'Wow, haven't you got two beautiful young children?' Looked up at their father and said, 'Wow, I can see where you get your looks from.' Then looked at the mother and said, 'Looking at the state of your mother's face, I can see it's not her.'" And I'm not quoting exactly, but it was something like that. It was something like the state of your mum's face. And the audacity of saying that, the just the fact that people think that they're okay to make any unsolicited comments is just ridiculous. And and I'm taking the shock factor away. I can see, like, how shocked you are. Like, where in
Yeah,
the world is that ever okay?
yeah.
It's never okay, and it's unbelievable that anybody even thinks it is. Um, well, I want to say that from our point of view, we were so proud that we know you when we
Thank
saw
you.
that. It was such an amazing, like the level of vulnerability you've shown then and since has been amazing, and we
And,
were very proud to know you.
and bravery.
Thank
It
you.
was a hugely brave act, and for the good of so many, you've given so many people permission to take that mask off for themselves, and I think,
Mm.
I'd really like to applaud you for that.
Thank you. It's I need to make sure I take that, because very often we just go, "Oh, thanks, yeah, as it'll do." But genuinely, I'll take that one there, because it does. I had somebody that sent me a very long message, a very, very long message, a couple of weeks ago, and I did that mistake of being really impolite of reading a message when I was at dinner with friends, and it basically it involved somebody taking their life. It was a real challenge, and they'd experienced Bell's palsy. Someone very close to them had sadly passed, and they said to me at the end of it, "If you doubt ever that you shouldn't do this and it's not making an impact, please make sure that you read this." And that was hugely emotional to read, just in the story of what had happened. But it reminded me that even if it makes a difference to one person, and gives a person inspiration to go out to the world and remove that mask, whether it's mental health, as I've had my own periods of challenge through that, and I'd openly talk about it, or whether it's because we've had a facial difference, then absolutely, if somebody's feeling, and look at the connection it's making, and being authentically me, and just removing that mask, like the connection it's making with perfect strangers, with friends, if I may call you that,
Cool.
with people in a room that want to talk to you, that believe in you, respect you, that trust you. That's the impact it's had on me, is being able to relationships that I've had.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we it's interesting because we talked in an earlier episode to a mountaineer called Nigel Vardy, who lost a large
Mm.
part of his nose and part of his face on through frostbite. Now, he also lost a lot of other limbs, crucial limbs, feet, fingers, hugely disabled because of it. But he told us that it was the changes to his face and the feeling of lost identity that had the biggest impact on him. He wasn't that bothered about his hands and feet. It was, subjectively, it was the loss of identity through his face. So,
And I know Mr. Frostbite, I think they call him, don't
yes,
they?
they do.
So
Yeah.
we live in the same town. But yes, absolutely. You reminded me I need to reach out to him, and I didn't catch that episode, so now I'm going to go back and find that one.
So
But
his
yeah,
documentary, we watched it last night. It's on Amazon Prime, so Frostbitten. So go and watch that, Gary, and all the listeners and watchers because it's fascinating.
Mm.
he's such a great guy as well.
Yeah.
Really is someone an amazing speaker and somebody that you can connect with in the first few minutes. And there's not many speakers out there that can do that. He's a really great guy. Absolutely.
Mm. So you went through all this and you put on a mask to the world,
Mm.
and you went out and built a business. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and you know that. Thank you for asking me that because it's important to talk about, isn't it? That we talk about the challenges, the adversity that we go through, and we don't talk about the success. And I did the craziest but best thing that I could do in 2009. That it's still crazy. I debate every time whether I was more crazy or it was a good idea. 2009, of course, we were in a worldwide recession at that point. Companies were shedding staff left, right, and centre. And I decided to set up a business. And part of that business, I'd worked in recruitment for a while. And my business partner, David, he'd worked in that world. And we said, why don't we set up a recruitment business? Which very quickly became much more than that, I might add. And we expanded into so many areas worldwide as well as diversified what we did. And I think, setting up in a recession made us a lot stronger in so many ways because when you had people shouting or screaming and asking you the audacity of ringing up and asking if they're going to recruit when they've just lost 200 staff, that was quite an interesting world. But we created relationships and we built relationships with people, and very much was the foundation of a consultancy that we developed because we realized that we weren't just those Argos order takers of the world, that we genuinely believed in making a difference at the end of the day to the people that were that we were placing, that we were working on. And no disrespect to August, we didn't pick them off the shelf, is the analogy that I mean. We genuinely went through every last element of it. But building a business was a challenge, was extremely stressful, and I reflect back on that through all the success that we had, through all of the challenges that come with that, because when I was struggling with my identity through what I'd gone through with my facial difference and becoming an adult at 18, if we still use that terminology, that world of, hugely identity changing, I then put my identity into a business, which is what I'd always wanted. But I'd got too absorbed and I'd forgotten that whilst I was a person in business, I was also a friend, a family member. I was enjoying my life. I wasn't, because I just got sucked into it. And I think so many people do, is that we
Mm.
lose our identity everywhere we go. We just become that business. And whilst we were successful, and yes, absolutely, we were multi-award winning, we were certainly seven figures in terms of what we were turning over. We did a huge acquisition that doubled us in size of business, and we were operating in amazing places like Singapore. We were in Hong Kong through an associate that we were working with over there, or a consultancy we're working with over there. Scotland, if we're talking exotic places. Depending on, that was a train journey every month up to Scotland. So there was a lot of success that we had through business, but I wasn't looking after myself. I was, and I think this is where you're getting to, is that I was building or we were building a hugely successful business, but I'd just forgotten where I was in it. And that has some really detrimental impacts on me. And shall I talk a bit about the mental health? Is
Yes,
this
please.
where
Oh, please do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so 2017, I remember being stood on a stage, and you'll have recognized this story from the show that I talk about because it was really significant. 2017, it was at the Derbyshire Cricket Club. I think we'd moved there from the Derby Football Club temporarily. I don't know what was going on. Beautiful venue. And I remember sitting there with the team. We had some clients along, and we'd entered something called the to People Development Award. We'd worked really, really hard on developing our culture on paper and looking aspirationally what we wanted to do with the business going forward. And I guess really we'd done it for a while, but putting it into words of what we knew was right and what we enjoyed. And without sounding arrogant, I knew that we were going to do well, but you never know for sure. And they read out all the names, and just before they said, "And the winner is," and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I went, "It might not be us," because I suddenly thought, if they don't say our name, look happy and pleased for the other person. So I went into that mode, and because we'd worked so incredibly hard, we really had, and they announced our name, and we went up on stage. I got the microphone, at the time I was MD, and later on I became CEO, and pushed to the front. Gary can talk. Had my two co-directors behind me. Our co-founder David was stood behind me. They were in tears, and as you now know, I can't get through most conversations without crying. So I then got a microphone and a podium in front of me, a lectern, whatever it is, and I had to talk to the room. And that doesn't always happen at awards now, I've now realised. And I had to talk to the world whilst holding some level of composure. What I didn't tell people, whilst I actually remained very composed and did very well, and I remember the president at that point said to me, it was the one acceptance speech that showed the most humility that he's ever seen, because you could see I was fighting those emotions. And what he didn't realize and what the room didn't realize, and my co-director, my co-founder did, was at that point I was experiencing severe depression. I was battling silently with that. I had crippling levels of anxiety, but I managed to get up and perform on stage. Perform. I wasn't doing any dance. Be careful how I say that, but stand there and deliver this speech. And yeah, I think that day I'd been to see a cognitive behavioral therapist. I was on antidepressants, and for me, in so many ways, I felt like that. Because you guess it, don't you? Like you're stood on stage, you're going. The irony of it, I'm sure you're both, and everybody listening will agree. Stood on stage, crippling anxiety, severe depression, like CBT. Like what? How did this guy even get on the stage? And they're crying in the background. Like I, I don't really know how I did that. Is it adrenaline that kicks in? You might know better than me.
I think there's a lot of masking that goes on in this world. Generally, you had been masking for a very long time by that point already, and we get into habits of it. And it's something that our charity Tough to talk about a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, you know Steve Whittle and the charity really well, and it is something that we talk about as part of that is that men particularly just crack on.
Yeah. I think it's
That's
that
it.
adrenaline, isn't it? It's that,
I think so, yeah.
her car is coming hurtling towards you. And I've had that, by the way. I fell over on a road once, and dragged myself out the way of the car. I've never spoken about that actually. Smashed all my screen of my phone trying to just get out of the way of it. The guy looked at me like I was drunk, but it's that in that moment you act. You have to do what you need to do. you've seen people that can lift cars. You've got to perform. And really relevant. And yes, um, I, I have the world of time for Steve. I really do. I listened to his podcast as well on the train to London yesterday, actually. Even though I know everything about Steve, I now know even more. And yes, you're absolutely right. And that stigma that comes with it as well, the that standing on stage and not showing your emotion, which is still there, sadly, but certainly as a guy to do that, it was a challenge. And if I may, I was going to say when I got back to the office within the next day, I think it was, and I'd been really passionate about wanting to share and I call it my superhero cape, like what I'd learned through CBT. I genuinely felt like I'd learned so much more strength as these superhero skills, and I wanted to share those with the world. And I said to my co-founder, co-director, I said, I want to now tell the world about what I went through because look at how successful we are. We're winning awards. And his response was, Gary, I agree with you. You absolutely should do that. But we are trying to grow. We're trying to attract investment as a business. Ironically, we never did go down the attracting an investor. And we ultimately came to an agreement between us that I would just stay silent and I wouldn't talk about my own experience because we realized that those people out there that invest in businesses back then were still very prejudiced against somebody that was experiencing depression, anxiety, especially if they were leading the business. And I reluctantly accepted what he'd said and moved forward. So,
I,
absolutely, now I shout about it for that reason because we be, shouldn't be beholden by that stigma, should we?
I think it's so common as well that there are so many business leaders out there doing, still doing what you did, which is signing a unwritten contract that you're going to stay silent for the sake of the business. And I think it happens all the time. It's just that in that 10-ish years, things have changed a bit, but
Uh,
it's a bit. It's not enough. That's why we have platforms like this, where we have people like you who are successful business owners come on and tell the world it's not always going to be rosy, and we need to start talking.
It is, and to use some statistics because we need to bring people into it. It's not just us talking about it with opinion. So when I set out to, when I stepped away from the business and said, right, I want to go and do something for me. I want to go out there. And that was partly down to the show, getting involved in the Channel 4 show. It helped me find my inner Gary and realizing that there was so much more I wanted to do with my life and finding my inner strength. I stepped away from that business initially as a non-exec, and only this year, 2025, I've fully stepped away and signed on a dotted line and scarily moved away from that business. But last year when I stepped down and debranded myself as it were, I started to talk about my story. But a good friend of mine said, Gary, you need some statistics. You need some evidence to show that it's not just you and your story. And she was right. It was really helpful. One of the stats and reports that I found, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, so forgive me, but it's that startup snapshot. It's like the untold toll of a business. I completely randomly forgetting it, but people will find it, I'm sure. And
Yeah,
the
and we can put it in the
statistic,
show notes.
oh, fab, that would be amazing. And I'm pleased that they did this work. So they found 72%. That's 72. I'm going to keep saying that. So I'm a millennial, so I'd convert that up. So three quarters of businesses, three out of four leaders, founders will experience and do experience mental health challenges. That's like the majority of, let's go with that. And any other way I can possibly say it. And I realized that it wasn't just my story. I realized that I was just one of the extremely rare few that was talking about it because the majority were experiencing it. And in the last week or so, and earlier this year, I I've been working with the East Midlands Chamber of Commerce. I'm just backing up and validating these stories. I We went out and we did asked four questions as part of their quarterly economic survey. So it was quarter one of 2025. And one of those questions was focused around decision making. And 75% said that they acknowledged that mental health, that, sorry, 75% acknowledged that their mental health impacted the decisions that they make. But just under 5% made it their top priority. That's a But somebody said to me yesterday, that's a bit like going, I shouldn't be eating takeaways every day of the week. I'll just eat them on Fridays, but then continue to eat takeaways most days of the week. And we ignore the best of advice. We really, really do. And even though we know that it's for our own good and for the good of the business, for the good of our employees, we should be prioritizing our own mental health and well-being as leaders, because those decisions that we make can be the make and break of a business, but it can be the people's mortgages. It could end up in fatality. It could end up in somebody losing their life. So why are we not prioritizing our own mental health and well-being? And I realize that I'm sat really low on camera. For people that will see this, you'll see I'm wearing a t-shirt that says selfish. And I absolutely do talk about that word, and you mentioned it in the intro, is because I thoroughly believe that we need to be a little bit more selfish. I'm not asking for the world, just a little bit more. Because when we are selfish and we fill our battery up and we grow our own energy and we look after number one, we heard that phrase before? We look after number one, then we can look after number two and we can help other people. And I say to people, when we are more selfish and we look after ourselves more, we can be more selfless and help and support other people, but don't lead from an empty place. We don't, that cliche analogy, but a plane is about to crash. It Those masks fall from the ceiling. Let's make sure that you will survive, and let's increase the likeliness of the person next to us to survive. Let's put your mask on first. But if we go and look after everybody else, you're almost guaranteeing that you will not survive. And that's not right.
No, I do want to talk about selfish leadership, but we were just on a course recently and they talked about it in a slightly different way of self-centered. So you're self-centered, and you go, yes, you need to be centered in yourself, because
Mm.
that being centered is a great base to start from. That's where you get strength. So they're very much in alignment with those two things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and another
absolutely.
word is, sorry, I was just going to say is self-awareness. That's the other word I hear, is like if we are aware of what's going on here in our present, in ourselves. But sorry, Matt.
That's all right. I was just going to share a personal anecdote from what you were just saying, and actually, you're in it, so you're an important part of it. Um, we all get busy in business. We all get busy, and as you just said, we all know that we need to prioritize ourselves logically, and it's so easy to get wrapped up. And this has happened to me several times now. It's not just once, where it's Sunday morning and I go, oh, there's like 6 or 7 emails I have to do today, and I've got to write an article because that's what the business needs. But I'm so tired, like, and from the week, it's been a hectic week, but it's what the business needs. I've just got to get it done. And then I'm having my morning coffee and I scroll Instagram and one of your posts comes up and it says to me, I'm out walking in the countryside today because that's what I need. And something inside me goes, do you know what? Gary's right. That's what the business needs right now. I think, but I don't need that right now. What I need is a nice leisurely breakfast with my partner. I need to walk in the countryside too, because I need to recharge.
Mm.
And every time I've done that, you know, I've done the things on Monday that the business needed, and actually I've done them better.
Absolutely. And there's one question I was going to ask you, and I feel like I'm putting my mentor hat on for a moment, but how does it feel? if my post didn't come up and remind you, and sorry for spamming your Instagram feed. the There's some people that would argue you shouldn't have been looking at Instagram, but I'll let you. Uh,
Absolutely.
but I'll let you if that's the effect it has, and I'll post more often now. But the question I wanted to ask you was, if you'd not seen that post, how would you feel that day knowing that you hadn't done that was hanging over you?
Yes, I would have felt guilt,
Hmm.
quite a lot of guilt, and I would have felt frustrated with myself that I couldn't do
But
all the things.
And
guilty because you'd let the business down? Guilty because you'd let yourself down? Like, who do
Both,
we what are we
both
feeling
of,
guilty
yeah,
about?
yeah. Both of, like, I know logically, it's ridiculous, but yes, I would have felt guilty in both directions.
but the
Yeah.
whole conversation that you just had about business owners and mental health and stuff, like Matt's been running his own business for 25 plus years now and has had times where his mental health has taken over
Mm.
and taken him out of the business for a while. And it is the resilience to build yourself back up and just go, right, okay, this is where we are. What do we do now?
Yeah. And it's I think we need to, just whilst we're talking about this MMA, I think it's important to point out, and you'll know this through certainly the work that you do as well. We're conditioned to feel guilty about these things, aren't we? Where the behaviors, I've said the word selfish, and there's people going, oh, that egotistical Gary, or that arrogant Gary, that guy that wants to put him above everybody else. When you said self-centered, I heard like an inner voice going, "You're so self-centered," and we hear that negative connotation of it. So we've been built. I've had 42 years of the world conditioning me to think in a certain way in the culture that I've grown up with. I'm very lucky to have had my mum who has inspired me, the people around me that have encouraged me, but the world has still made me feel guilty about not sending. And I don't know if you saw it. I didn't send a newsletter out for 4 weeks because of the TV show went out. It was really busy. I had different speaking events. I've got loads this month already. Podcast appearances also on my own podcast as well. It's just been absolutely crazy. And I just put a message out and apologized because I felt it was appropriate to do that. And some people said, "What you're apologizing for? You get busy." But I'm a firm believer in the way that I've been conditioned is that if we've got something to apologize for, we should. So I did, and I was like, "Sorry if you were expecting this. If this helps you and stops you working on a Sunday, then I'm sorry that I didn't put this out." But things happen. I was going to swear then. I'll not do that.
Well,
But
lots of people do, Gary, but it's all
okay, then
right.
shit happens. It's a low swear. Yeah, things get in the way. Life gets in the way. More important things go on the list. And those more important things can be having a breakfast in the morning on a Sunday morning. Do you know the one amazing thing that I did in COVID? I had a bath. It was the best thing that I did. I put a podcast on. I lay in the bath. Do you know how many baths I have now? Very few. I have a walk-in shower. It's huge, but I made sure when I got my shower, I also had a bath, and the bathroom fitter was really annoyed at me because there wasn't enough space, but we squeezed both in because it's really important. And I'm 5'11", no bath's ever going to fit me in comfortably. It's But they're really important. And actually, only a few weeks ago, I had a Epsom salts in there, and I had a bath. So,
You love a bath, don't you, Matt?
Yeah, I do. I do think it's a great resetter. And I do the same as you. I put a podcast on and I lay there and listen and just come back to me. It's awesome.
you'll have to give me a technique. So I used to listen to a podcast called the Chick Peeps. So like chickpeas, but Chick Peeps. It was a vegan podcast. They spoke about Harry Potter in it. It was a bit crazy, but it was a really chilled out. It was like, I was going to say it was like sitting in a bath with your friends. That's not the analogy I want to use at all. But if you friends, then I really wouldn't be. To be
So
fair,
you
I
want to
wouldn't
go
be
back?
bothered. I really wouldn't be bothered. There'd be nothing exciting going on if that's where your mind takes you. But I'd genuinely just be sat there having a good chat with with friends. But now the challenge that I have, and it's a whole different conversation in itself, so I'll let you move me on, but is when we sit in the bath where we want to switch off, there is a natural place where we go to is to listen to this amazing podcast, mine, somebody else's, a big podcast that's a worldwide known podcast by a well-known guy. I'm not going to plug it whatsoever. Um, why do we go back to listening to work podcasts? So if you've got any recommendations, if anybody wants to send me any, I want to go and listen to just a fun old podcast. I started listening to one that was talking about the meaning of words. I can't quite remember it. Susie Dent and Hugh,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
can't
Oh,
remember his
yes.
name. So that's
Yeah.
an
She's
amazing
really good.
podcast to listen to. Got through all of them now. They stopped it. But yeah, when you are pausing, don't be tempted to say, "Oh, I'll just go and do my accounts today," or "I'll just go and listen to a work podcast in the bath," or "I'll go and read that book that Gary sent me that he wrote," or no, go and switch off fully.
Mm.
If you can do, you need to be doing it fully because
Yeah.
so many people misrecognize that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And funny enough, I'm going to slap myself on the wrist because I do tend to default to work podcasts in the bath.
See,
Mm,
I think though that that's because we genuinely enjoy
Yeah,
them.
I do genuinely enjoy them,
So
but
for
yeah,
me, it still feels like a switch off because like I listen to Mel Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. And
yes.
for me, it's such a like personal development is a switch off for me. I really enjoy it.
Mm.
Um, but I would probably, if I wanted to switch off, I'd probably go to an audiobook. Like if I
Mm.
didn't want to listen to a work thing, I'd go for an audiobook.
I've,
But again,
yeah.
I love what do I love? Autobiographies.
Yeah.
So
Ah.
some would say that's almost work related because it's people, it's all about people. I'm nosy. So I
Mm.
love hearing about people's lives, why they've done stuff, which essentially is linked to my work as well. So it's like, well, is that still work? But for me, I just love that connection of people that an autobiography gives you that you go, what has their life
Mm.
been? Like, who have they met? What has their journey been? And I just find that fascinating.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Well,
And I will say, I apologize. I was talking about guilt and shame and all of that. And I've just shamed or guilted you into listening to a work podcast. But there's a
My
really important point there is to say, if you can fully switch off, please do. But
mm.
actually, we will find energy in going and listening to a work podcast if you are disciplined enough to not then end up working on the back of it or going, that's a great
Yes.
idea. Where's my notepad?
Yeah.
I'm not that disciplined. So if you can do that, great. But yeah, try and switch off fully if you can do. Do you know what's great? I go out on a horse. You can't think about work when you're on a horse because you just
No,
think
because
about
I
not
can't
falling
breathe.
off.
I can't breathe when I'm on a horse.
All
I'm very
right.
allergic to horses.
Yeah, that won't last very long.
No.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes or sayings, I say it to my clients all the time, is guilt is a wasted emotion. So unless you've murdered somebody or genuinely done something wrong to somebody that you intended, guilt's just a wasted emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that.
Hi, so we just wanted to stop the podcast for just a few seconds to introduce you to our HQ community. It's for bold solopreneurs and small business owners who are tired of doing things on their own because let's face it, success is a team sport.
We've got a great community already together of brilliant people. They are kind, they are interesting, they are knowledgeable, and they are already supporting each other. What we've seen in the group in just the last few weeks has been really incredible. So if you want to join us, it is the place to be. Find out more and join now. www.qbranch.consulting/HQ. Remember, success is a team sport. Now back to the podcast. I want to take you back to that lectern again now because a new mission, like we see this all the time on the podcast, there's always a catalyst point where a new mission starts. And I think that was the point where a new mission started for you. Although you were sort of silenced in it immediately afterwards, a new mission obviously started there. Tell us what that mission looks like now.
Yeah, thank you. Really, really good question. So, Yeah, absolutely. Just to re-clarify then, so yeah, standing at the front of that stage, talking about the success of the business, but hiding behind that mask still. I absolutely, and of course, that conversation where he said to me, my co-director said, "Now's not the time to do it. Now isn't what you should do." I I I looked at setting a charity up at the time. It was the wrong thing to do because I was so busy with everything that was going on in the business. So the right thing to do was just to stick to one thing. That's what we do as entrepreneurs. We get so excited in many, many different things, and yeah, the big COVID came along, so that was quite a busy period. A couple of years later, so I'm glad I didn't. Uh, but yeah, in 2024, well, earlier than that, just in 2023, at the end of that year, I had lost my nan. She'd suddenly, within the space of a day, been taken to hospital and sadly passed away that evening. My nan is the person that keeps me. Yeah, my nan and I were always the people that would sit in the corner of the room causing trouble. So she's the person that always gives me the humor and that humility, and certainly tries to change the world. So she's had a huge influence over my life. And having gone through the initial filming for Channel 4 and finding myself and finding that self-love that Jono has taught me and finding that inner strength, that was kind of phase one, if you like. Phase two was my nan passing away. Phase three was going, actually, if I'm going to change the world with this newfound strength, if my nan has taught me anything can be disruptive, I now need to go and do it. So I had a tough conversation. I say a tough conversation because I didn't fully commit to it, like wholly go, right, that's it, I am definitely leaving. I said, which is the worst thing I could have done. And if I could go back and apologize, I would have done. I could do, and probably still should. And I went, I think I'm ready to leave. And my business partner went, what? What do you mean you need to leave? Little did I know at that point, I'd pretty much made myself redundant. I'd stepped into we'd grown, we'd acquired. I'd stepped into a CEO role, so I was very strategic. I wasn't on the tools day to day. We'd brought an operations director in. We'd done all the things that we needed to do to be sustainable and grow. And I had made myself redundant in so many ways. But yeah, when I think it was Christmas time, I went home and thought about it. And then in March 2024, I told the team and I said, yeah, I'm stepping away. I'm moving away from the business. They said, who's going to do all of your work? And I said, well, a bit of confession here, guys. Not really been doing anything for the last year. And kind of done as much as I possibly could do. But I mean, I was doing stuff, of course I was, but not where the level that they thought I was doing. And yeah, at that point, I stepped away. I'd been to, and I'm still gutted that I missed you guys on Wednesday this week. Went to a meeting with the Professional Speaking Association, and I went, and there's a guy called Richard McCann who I'm good friends with now, and I heard Richard McCann talk about what he's done in terms of a speaking career for the last 2 3 decades, and I went, I want to be a speaker. I've got a story to tell. I'm ready to be stepping away from this business. So this is March 2024. And I went, right, that's it. I'm going to be a speaker. I'm going to go out to the world. I'm going to tell them my story. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to debrand myself away from that business that I've been so long connected to, 14, 15 years at that point. And I'm going to go and tell people that you can grow a hugely multi-award winning successful business and have depression and anxiety and break this stigma and break this association between ill and poor mental health and success, because you can have both. They do exist. But there are plenty of people, sadly, some people do take it to the point where they do take their own lives. And I've never tried to take my own life in that sense, but I've certainly gone, is this an option? It's something that I've considered whether it was a route for me to take, a pathway. And it's important for me to say that. And I was one of the lucky ones that didn't do that, for me and for family and friends around me. And I wrote down on a I say wrote, I'm very digital. I completed a form very strategically, wrote a this is my mission, this is my purpose, this is my branding document. And I wrote on that, typed, my mission is to break the stigma of mental health and well-being for leaders. Simple as that. Right. For so long in HR and people in the world that I'd been in development, everywhere that I'd worked, I was constantly hearing about the guilt and shame that came with you need to look after your employees. You need to support the mental health and well-being of your employees. And I don't think I ever did. I'm going to say rarely, just in case. I didn't hear anybody talk about the mental health and well-being of the people that were running those businesses, the people that were leading those teams, those organizations that had set that business up. I'd never heard of it. And having gone through what I had gone through and seeing other people that I've supported in floods of tears, having difficult conversations when they've had to make people redundant, I acknowledged that I wasn't alone. I didn't know how lonely or how big scale this was at that point, but I realized that it was happening around me and I had to do something about it because it is important to look after the mental health and well-being of employees. Absolutely is. But what about us? And I now believe, and the way that I go about the work that I do in terms of living that mission is to get people to look at mental health and well-being in the workplace from the top down rather than the bottom up. And when I say that, I mean we need to rather than convincing people, we need to look after the employees, and it's very hierarchical. But looking after the employees below, everybody is important. It's a 360-degree conversation, no matter where you are in an organization. Hopefully that connects. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it does.
it really does. It really does. So if there's a leader sat watching or listening to this right now and they think, Christ, yeah, like Gary's right, but I don't really know what to do. What what do you want them to do?
The I get asked this question a lot, and I think there's two ways of looking at it. If you are sitting there and you are thinking about it, you've already started. You are already on that journey because that ostrich effect of just burying your head in the sand, that is absolutely what we do as entrepreneurs and leaders. We just get on with it, especially when bad things are happening, when those bad events are happening all around us. We put our heads in the sand and we don't look. And the very fact that you are considering that you might need to be looking at it is already a step in the right direction. But if you're on that journey and you're thinking, I need to do something about it, but I'm stuck, where do I go? There are going to be people around you that you can talk to, that you know that you can be psychologically safe, that have that safe environment around you that you can talk to. And if that just means that you can talk to one person and break down in tears, shout, scream, swear, however we, I, however we live our emotions, we already know I'm a crier. I can shout as well. I always, when people say they get drunk, you're either a fighter I can't think of the other terminology. Either you cry or you get angry. That whatever you are, whatever emotion comes to you, live it, feel it. I'm I'm sat here now with no shoes on, and I encourage people to just get that level of grounding. Feel the ground beneath you. Take your shoes and your socks off. Feel that ground around you. Look around you and say, why am I doing this? What is important to me? What one thing do I need to change? And that's all I ask people to do is start that journey. But yeah, it can be one person that you talk to, it can be one thing that you change, and come and listen to me. It's a blatant plug, but so please do forgive me and edit it out if you don't.
No, no, no,
So
no, no. We like plugs. Go for it. Tell
um,
them all about your programs and what they you can offer them.
Mm.
so well, I was going to talk about Leaders in Disguise. So Leaders in Disguise is a podcast that I started. It was the very first thing that I decided to do because I realized that it's all very well and good me talking about my story, but many voices speak louder. I can't think of someone else said that much more articulately than I did, but there's many voices as we can do that talk about their own challenges, their own success. Uh, that's what Leaders in Disguise is. So I started the podcast to first of all get my story out there, and then start bringing other people in to hear the different variations of stories. We've had over a year's worth of stories and journeys that people have been on, right through from people that have just started out in small ways and small successes and challenges that they may have had, right through to multimillionaires that have bought and sold businesses that have tried to take their own lives. What we realize is that it doesn't discriminate. Like no nobody that is growing a business will say to you that they do it smoothly and don't have challenges. Don't sit there and question what they're doing or question their life. And hopefully not too many people do that. I'd hope none, but I'm not that naive. But certainly people that do, I want them to realize and listen to Leaders in Disguise and watch it. It's on YouTube as well. Watch these people talk, watch them talk with that humility, with that vulnerability, lifting their mask and saying, this is what is normal. And not to invalidate anyone's feelings whatsoever, but normal things happen to normal people. And this is what happens. So, absolutely go and listen to something like Leaders in Disguise. Come and, yeah, you told me to plug everything. I'm going to throw it all out there now.
Yeah,
So,
throw it in, and we'll put links in the show notes too.
thank you. Yeah. So, well, dead easy to find if people look for me is Gary Parsons UK, and or Gary Parsons.uk. I managed to get as a domain name, which is really great. And yeah, now I work as a speaker. I stand on stages with hundreds of people, tens of people, depending on how many are in that room. I'll turn up and talk about my story, but I'll also give those takeaways of those important stories and get people to unmask in that audience. And I do that also through wellbeing workshops that I run. I've recently just finished delivering a program with an amazing group of leaders in a special educational needs college where the team there weren't looking after themselves, and we looked at how they could be a little bit more selfish. And we then took that even further when we were able to take their time back. We looked at how they could be encouraged to go and coach their team, to empower the people around them, and get their time back in a double up on it, double down, or whatever they say, double down on it, and make sure that they are okay to grow and have that time out. Because sadly, the team's feedback was that they didn't feel like their leaders, their managers, whoever they were in the organization, were as accessible as they would like. And the feedback that I got in the room was that they wanted to show up, they wanted to be there, but they were just doing it a little bit too much. And we just needed to find, and that age-old word that comes in every conversation that I have, just needed some more balance. And that's what I do. So yeah, now that's through standing on stage, the workshops that I run, the mentoring that I do with predominantly business owners, but lots of them are newer existing leaders. That's the change that I now make and help and inspire people to pull out their toolkit and ultimately make a difference to their own lives, but the people that are around them. And that could be, believe it or not, their family or friends, and not just the people at work. Or,
Yeah,
oh, actually, the friends and family of the people that they work with.
Yeah, it's a massive ripple effect.
yeah, and that's amazing. And you've certainly like informed and inspired us over the last months, Gary. You really have. So thank you for that. Um,
Thank you.
we could talk to you all day long. I've got a million other questions, so there might even be a part two at some point. But
I used to say that to people, and I'm not going to hold you to it, honestly. There's lots
but
to talk about.
I do want you to give you the opportunity to tell the audience whatever you want to tell them that we haven't asked you. What haven't we asked you that you want the world to know?
Do you know? Thank you. And we've talked a lot about a lot of things. I go back to that word selfish, though, if I can do,
Mm,
because there is a person in that. It's the first four letters is self, and I will share this with you now. I've developed a selfish framework, and that self is if you can do four things in your life to be a little bit more selfish and, like I say, not only support your own mental health and well-being, but see the impact it has on others around you, whether that be family, friends, or colleagues. And that is to one, set boundaries. So think about how you do that. It could be time bound, it could be those physical boundaries, it could just be switching off in the right ways we've talked about. Two is elevate well-being. So think about how you can elevate your own well-being, how you can bring it up your list, and you can start thinking about how you can pause a little bit more. You've got L. You can see where I'm going with this. L, so leading with intention. Book that time out in your calendar is the simplest thing that you can do. I'm not teaching you anything rocket science here. Go and book an hour out in your diary and lead with intention. Book an hour out to develop yourself. Go, absolutely. I really a big believer in a different conversation around intentionality, and absolutely leading with intention is a huge thing. And then foster growth, foster that growth in yourself. Look at those development opportunities, but look around you. I just mentioned that about coaching and empowering others. See what you can do with that knowledge that you've generated, that you've found, that you've embraced, that you've been able to harness, and go and foster that growth, not in yourself, not only in yourself, but other people around you as well. So it's a framework that I've developed in the at some point there will be a book about it. I've got 46,000 words at the moment.
Very
I
good.
have stopped. It needs to be edited and brought down into something. And yeah, absolutely. So if you can work on that self framework, so set boundaries, elevate well-being, lead with intention, foster growth, if you can do that, absolutely, you are making massive steps in the right direction.
yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. Thanks, Gary. That's
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Um, One of my favorite parts of the podcast now, today, and it's funny because it has shifted recently, but today I can't say it's my favorite part because there's been quite a few favorite parts. But I do get now to do my desert island discs bit, and I'd like to ask you to give us a book, a piece of music, and a tool or framework that has made a massive impact on your journey that you'd like to share with other people.
Okay, I'm gonna grab this now. Bear with me a
Yeah, do.
second. Let's grab this. Oh, I'll find it on my screen. I, bear with me a second. There we go. So it's called the Burnout Survival Kit. It's something
Ah,
that it's by an amazing person called Imogen Doll. It's a really, really good book, and I don't like books that are a bit yellowy and a bit Times New Roman. It's an amazing book. So when I was burnt out, when I was struggling, it was a fabulous book just to look at those short-term problems. And I feel patronized. It's just really interactive, and you can pull it out at any point and just say, I need to sort this out, and I need to just get support and work in the right way. And you'll
awesome.
have to remind me of the other bits that you asked.
Yeah, no problem. There'll be a link to that book in the show notes, and I'm going to buy one as soon as we finish recording. Um,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Music, piece of music.
Piece of music. Oh, crikey. Do you know, growing up, I have heard so many different bits of music. I will listen to hard rock music right through to the most beautiful classical music. I really will do. And I used to play piano when I was younger. I tried to do it again, but then COVID hit. Um, Music that I will always listen to, there is, God, crikey, you've got me really thinking on this. I can't name one song, but I would definitely say a classical music playlist is something that's so powerful. But then the acoustics as well. If Savage Garden Animal Song, if you're driving, it's an amazing driving song. I was going to say I wasn't going to name one song, but it's the drums in it. You put it up loud. I can hear it now. My camper van outside, Vicky the van. When I'm driving and I can put out full blast, I feel every note, every drum beat. You can see just in my body language.
Yeah.
But something that just makes you feel, and I can get that from classical music right through to something that might sound like cheesy pop.
It's really fascinating, actually, that everyone we've spoken to who is some sort of leader with creativity in their path has such eclectic music tastes. Every single person. That's fascinating, and that's a great track. I love that one.
Yeah,
So
definitely. You're gonna go and listen to it now.
I am, yeah, yeah. I'm going to buy the book and I'm going to listen to the music. Um, I think it's probably yours, but tool or framework?
Tool or framework? Yeah, self framework definitely is something that I would want to talk about. However, let's go away from the obvious. When I was doing CBT, there was something called ACE. So it was all about looking at what we achieve, what we connect with, and what we enjoy. And when I did that, when they asked me to draw a circle and then carve that out into three sections, should I say, they were very, very small for me at one point, and I've spoken about it on my own podcast and other places. And for me, there was a very small things that I was enjoying, and there was a very thin line of things that I was connecting with, and there was very thin line of things that I felt like I was achieving, albeit I now would look on it in hindsight and realize I was achieving a lot. And for me, that I live my life by it in so many ways. I need to make sure I'm achieving lots, I'm enjoying lots, and I'm connecting with it. If I'm not doing one of those things, then something's going wrong. And achieving can be, controversially, can just be getting up and getting showered and doing those things and showing up. And yeah, every day is a real mix. But I would say that ACE framework and tool is definitely something that helped me recognize and identify what was going on. And I don't know if I would have been here now if I'd not been shown that tool.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
It's been great to finally catch up and be together on the screen. I mean, we see you a lot in person, but
You do. I'm sorry. Yeah, I spam your feed and I spam you at networking, and I avoid you when you come to events that I should be at.
Yeah.
but we have been trying to get this for quite a while now, and we got our diaries together just about by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, and it's and it's absolutely lived up to promise and beyond. It's been so good to connect with you, Gary, and talk about your story and everything you're doing. And and I just want to reiterate that we completely applaud what you're doing and think it's an amazing mission and an important one, and you are absolutely the right person to be delivering it. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. I absolutely do appreciate your kind words, and I know you mean them, and it does make a big difference. And yes, thank you, and thanks for being the inspiring pair, the peeps that you are, and always being the light of most rooms that I walk into. You're always there, and in conversations that I'm in with the right people, it shows the work that you do is absolutely something not only that you are passionate about, but you care about it so deeply. And I was always more than happy and excited to come and chat to you. So thank you for the platform and telling many, many stories today.
Thank you,
Brilliant.
Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Jenny, your life's just one big drama. This was what my auntie said to me, and it inspired me to put all my dramas in one book. So if your life is full of drama, and I believe everyone's life is full of drama, this is the book with real stories, real struggles, real tools to navigate real life.